Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 2H pencil and start working the lips. Very lightly. I want to make sure that I can see where I'm going with these, so I'm going to go ahead and lightly put in the color. You want to make sure it's very light. This is an H pencil, so it's not going to blend out too much. But I'm not putting any pressure on the pencil. I'm just letting the weight of the pencil do the work. Okay, now for her teeth. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to put a line all the way down. You don't want her teeth outlined. Her teeth are basically created by the values and the shadows that we're going to put in, not by lines. So I'm going to go ahead and just go along her gum line. Her gum line is okay. Again, very, very lightly. But I'm not going all the way down. The reason I'm doing this is so I have a nice map to see where I'm going. Because as you know, sometimes you'll work and you'll lose your map. So we're going to try to avoid that here. And notice I'm just going over like the darkest areas. Where the dark lines are, not necessarily over the whole thing. Okay, it looks like she has a gum line that comes down pretty far here. And then this one has a bit of dark right there. Okay. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to start with my darkest areas. I usually always start with my darkest areas. It appears that the lip and the gum are pretty close to the same. So when looking at the values, I'm seeing that the lip is just slightly darker. In that area there. Okay, I'm going in with my 2B. And darken this area a bit. This is where the shadow is. Pull it out. Going back in with my 2H. And I'm going to lightly put some value on these lips. I'm going to avoid the highlighted area. I want to make sure that my pencil strokes are nice and smooth and even. I don't really want start and stop points. Okay, I'm going to take my HB and I'm going to start putting in some of the shadow on this top lip. I'm using hardly any pressure. Okay, and then this is a little bit darker here. I'm going to take my 2B and define this shadow right here. I'm going to take my blending stump. I'm going to soften all of this up. Okay, I'm going to pull this down in here. And now that I have some color on my stump, I'm going to go ahead and put that up here in this highlighted area. Blending it out just a bit. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the lower lip. Start in the shadowed area. Now this has quite a heavy shadow here. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 2B, and before I go down, remember we want to keep it separate. So we want to make sure that this is defined enough to where we can see it, and that it's different. And this has quite the dark shadow right here as well. Kind of comes down like so. Soften it just a bit. Okay, going back in with my 2H. And this is a fairly light tone in here. And then right about where this tooth and this tooth meet, which is right about here, it does get a little bit darker. It's like a dark part on her lip. And that comes down like so. Again, I'm not using hardly any pressure. Just going very lightly. Layer more as I need. Okay, now between this tooth and this tooth, there is a highlight right in here. So I want to leave that. And then there's a shadow right here. There's quite the large highlight in here. And then now this area from here to here is lighter than this little area here. So I'm going to lightly go over that. I don't want to lose this detail, so I'll just go over it a couple times to make sure it still stays. Okay, now once we get here, it's pretty consistently dark. It's slightly lighter than this, but darker than this, except for the highlighted areas here, until we get to about this tooth right here, and then it gets dark like this again. So I'll go ahead and put this darker area in. There we go, and now I'm going to go lighter. Still using my 2H pencil. Now the reason I'm doing the lips first is, number one, I need something to judge my values for the teeth, and I have somewhere to pull graphite from, because I tend to use parts of my piece as a palette. Okay, I'm going to take my HB, and I'll go in to some of these darker areas and darken them up a bit. Now the top up here is darker than the bottom down here. So I'm going to go ahead and annotate that by putting just a bit of shadow so it looks like the lip is curling under. We'll do the same thing up here once we get the gums in down up there. We'll make adjustments. Going over this darker area here. Again, leaving the brightest area here as a highlight. Okay, I'm going to take my blending stump. I'm going to start in the darkest areas and pull the color out to the other areas. When you're doing this, look at your reference, see where the really darks are, work in that area a little bit more, and then pull your pencil out. Lightly go over the highlight. I'm going to start with my HB. I'm going to go in here. And I'm going to put in the gum area. Paying attention to where the gums are. And what value they should be in what areas. Notice, like on this one here, it has a darker value and then it goes into a lighter value. This one's pretty light here, but there is a bit of a shadow underneath right here. So I want to get that in there. And then these over here are pretty dark. I'm going to take the point of my blending stump and just soften that a little bit. Okay, now most of the mouth is pretty defined. There's still some adjustments we can make, but I'm going to go ahead and start in with the teeth. I am not going to use my pencils for the teeth. There's no reason to use your pencil. That's why I did this first, so we had some value and graphite to pull from. So I'm going to use my blending stump, and I'm going to use the side that I already have pigment on. And I'm going to start in the darkest areas because you have the most pigment on your, or the most graphite on your blending stump right now. So you want to make sure that you use the darkest area and use that up first, and then move to the lighter areas. So just like your pencil, there's different pressures you can use. You don't want to go in really hard because your lines are going to be too harsh. So I use varying pressure for my teeth as well. So this is the darkest tooth here, and then we're going to go around and define this tooth a little bit. And then this one has quite a dark shadow right in here. And again, coming down. Shadow goes all the way down the tooth. Coming down. And look and see what side the shadow is actually on each tooth. It does change a bit. Like here, we're getting a little bit into where it changes. So this tooth has a bit of a shadow here, but then it kind of changes and moves over to here. And this one here is kind of the same. She doesn't have a lot of definition between her teeth with this smile, partly because this picture was taken with a flash. You lose a lot of detail when you use a flash because it blows everything out. Okay, now there's a little bit of a shadow on this side. And this one's pretty much in shadow. Okay, we want to see what is highlighted and what is not. This is a little bit here. Remember, teeth are not white, so I am barely, and when I say barely, I mean like barely, putting any pressure on any of these teeth. I'm just putting just a very light touch of graphite on them. The only place you should have pure white from the paper is this tooth right here, and it's right in here. Okay, now that we have the basics of the teeth and everything in, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to darken. I'm using my 2B here. I'm going to darken these darkest areas and really make this pop. Okay, this one is here. This highlight one has a little bit of gum coming down like that. And then this one here, a bit darker right there. This has a nice little shadow going across. This here. Just adjusting the gum. Gently touching on these areas, softening some of the lines. We don't have harsh lines as humans, so we want to make sure that all the lines we put on here are nice and soft. Just looking at the reference, using my blending stump to see what areas need to be adjusted on her teeth. She does have a little bit of a shadow running across parts of her teeth. So down here, and this one. Right here. There is a dark area up in here. Changing her tooth shape just a little bit. Again, this one is in shadow. Comes up like so. I'm going to use my HB and I'm going to start separating the teeth out from the lips. So that shadow we were talking about earlier, or I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go ahead and find that a bit more. put in some of the details she has in her lips. There's a couple little areas here where you can see. Let's see this. Goes up like that. So depending upon how realistic you want to get, depends upon how much detail you put in. Now I'm really studying the reference photo here, putting in the different values that I'm seeing in the different areas on her lip. Over this one is right here. A little bit darker here, and definitely darker down here. And then here we have dark right in here. And here. Here. And then this kind of fades into her skin. So we don't want to make it too dark, but we do want to get some of the texture we see. So we'll go ahead and put a few little lines lightly in here. When we blend it out, it will smooth them down. I'm going to take some 2B, make this even darker in some of these areas. Making the appropriate adjustments. coming down. This area down here is actually quite a bit darker. Just adjusting the values. This is all we're doing right now, is just adjusting the values in the various places that you need to adjust them. Really study your reference photo. The lighter, again, I'm saving. I'm going to use my blending stump to create those lighter areas. Taking my blending stump and I'll blend all of this out. Again, paying attention to where the highlights and shadows are. This one I feel needs to be defined just a bit more. Go ahead and pull some of this out for her face, so we're not just stopping at the lips. That would look really odd. Again, I'm using my blending stump. I'm not really concerned about using any of my pencils right now. Skin is very soft, so it's a nice little shadow down here. Okay, now something you'll notice is there is a bit of a shadow cast from the upper lip. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. We're just coming off of the skin or off of the lips, creating the skin, softening the edge. Paying close attention to our darks and lights. Because this is what's going to make her smile look natural or unnatural. Just putting some value in up here, not a lot, just enough to glaze it over, tone it down a bit. If you find it's too much, or you need to pull out some highlight, then use your kneaded eraser and just dab. Use my Tombow Mono Eraser here. And there's a little bit of highlight in there. Okay, now I'm going to adjust that back down. I am looking at both the color picture and the black and white picture, as I can see a little bit more detail in the color picture, like the separation of her teeth, how much is actually supposed to be there. So that is what I'm using for this now, just looking back and forth. Now this one doesn't go all the way down. We have a little bit of separation there, but not a lot. So when you come off the lip here, you want to make sure there's enough definition to define the lip from the skin, because the lip does have a definite, is definitely a little bit darker, but you don't want to have an outline. You want to make sure that you don't have a huge difference. Like if I was to outline this, it would just look unnatural. She does have a bit of a shadow down here. So I'm going to take my HB pencil because I need it dark enough to show up. Let's see here. I lost some of the shadow on her lip, actually. Okay, now she does have a bit of a shadow down here. So I'm going to use a bit of the side of my HB pencil and put that in. It is lighter than her lips, so if we need to adjust her lip value, then that's what we'll do. I'm going in with my 2B to adjust just the edge of her lip value. Right in this area where that shadow is. And then I'm going to take my blending stump and blend that out. I'm going to pull that shadow down a little bit. And again, just look at your reference and adjust your tones and values and separations and stuff like that. Now there's tons of ways you can do this. This is how I do it. This is a little bit bright for what we need, so I'm going to tone that down with just my blending stump. Our brightest highlight is actually right here. These are just additional, just where her lips change color actually. It's not actually a highlight, so to speak. And that is about it. That's pretty much how you do teeth. Just look where your shadows are and don't leave them white, but don't outline them either. And just pay attention to their shape. I could probably sit here and play with the shape for another 10 or 15 minutes. Making sure that it is correct, but that is about it. Again, just adjust your values as you need. If you have the colored picture, look at both and see where the differences are. The black and white did not exactly pull up the all the detail that you need. So use both to your advantage. If you find that this is too harsh, you can take a tissue and blend as well, especially on the facial area, right around the lips to soften it, pull out some of that color. So I hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions, be sure to let me know and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Catch you soon and keep on arting.